societies, and then hi guys. Yeah. It's not going to be too much time. Segment 2. Yeah, that's what I was.
Hello, we are live. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Friday and welcome to this episode of Today's Harmonics presented by Quantum Play Studios. I am your host, Rachel, and I have my lovely co-host here, Aria, and we're here to talk all about entertainment with you. And entertainment in all of its many forms, all of its many iterations, all of that good stuff. So we spent a little bit of time getting ready for this show. We have a lot of fun stuff to cover in terms of topics and different tendrils that we can take it. But first of all, we want to ground everything, the foundation of where we are in time space, because, you know, timelines are getting a little crazy right now, and entertainment is definitely a medium by which we are able to kind of, like check the weather. So let's go into the foundation of entertainment and what that all means, and I'll let Aria take us through that to start.
Hi, everyone. So glad you're joining us live today, and for everyone who's watching the recording later on. A few weeks ago, I was contacted by a local festival here in Toronto, Canada, and they asked me to do a written piece. So I ended up doing a lot of research on sacred festivals and the history and sanctum that was this notion of festival. And when I say festival, it includes theater and, even certain sporting events.
I think of festivals as like huge EDM, Tomorrowland,
yeah,
like festival.
Yeah, and like this is the cool thing. Like I was thinking of Greek festivals or these like ancient Egyptian, ancient Indian festivals. I'm sure in other parts of the world too, but these are just the ones I'm familiar with, right? These are 6, 7, 10-day festivals. Often they align with lunar cycles or agricultural cycles. So like pagan festivals around Beltane or Embolic, goddess festivals like the Durga or the Kali festival, the festival of Dionysus, harvest festivals, right?
Yeah.
You have all these long days, and every single person from age like 2 to age 200 is involved. Someone's carving, someone's doing the food. And what is happening is in these ancient festivals, no person is untouched by the festival. And there is a level of true engagement from start to finish. If you were an accountant or a banker, your life would pause because you're doing accounting or blah, blah, blah for the festival, or you're just like helping in the kitchen, right? Because you're creating, and the importance of that in society, in ancient societies, was no one had vacations then, right? You are creating liminal space. The festival is a container for you to move through, and maybe you had a great harvest, and maybe you lost your cow, and maybe you had a stillborn, and maybe there was a wedding in your family. And so these festivals, because a lot of them are feminine, like they are on the feminine aspect, they're on harvest cycles, goddess festivals, they create space for ecstatic grief, ecstatic pain, ecstatic joy. And then you move through all of it so that when you come out of the container, it ends in sacred prayer, in the enactment of oneness with the divine. And so theater, right? Sorry, this is like so mundane for me because this is just part of this is festival in my life anyway.
You know what though? It's funny, like when you say mundane too. Like I have an astrologer. It's like, well, mundane astrology. I'm like, that's not mundane at all. Like, what do you mean? It's cosmic. It's absolutely cosmic.
Yeah, no, 100%, and it's meant to be. It's meant to be that. And I was looking at why ancient Greeks started the Olympics, right? And
Oh, good.
this is
Like that.
the way it's worded by like theologists and stuff. It's a celebration of sport, and it is a sacred festival to please the gods.
Yes.
They are doing this, they are enacting beauty, strength, agility of the body and the mind, like in and like oftentimes they would like delay a war because the games weren't finished, right? Again, 5 to 10 day festival on the celebration of physicality, right? Like, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I love that people didn't go, like, maybe you went a bit to be entertained, but you went because this is where you were enacting oneness with the divine.
Mm.
And so here you have true engagement. And I'm reminded of, like, like certain Greek, the festivals around theater, right? Like maybe you have a film festival in your local city or a theater festival, but a festival of Dionysus is like, there's like parades, you act out wilderness, right? Like this is a symbology of Pan and like fairies, and you wear horns, and like everyone's drunk on grape and fermented wine and
Oh,
all of that because
give me
it's
some of that. Give me those festivals back.
true, but truly that. Like I go to
Truly
tons of
that. Truly
festivals,
that. I know what you mean.
and it's performative, right? It's like, let's perform wildness. And I'm like, have you been in the wild? There's a harmony. There's a
Mm.
place for sensuality. There's a place for all of that, and there's a place for sobriety,
Yes.
right? Like, what is
Yes.
it to be drunk on the divine? Like, the Sufi poets like do this really well. Like tantric poets do this really well. My point in all this is that this notion of entertainment is like, I'm coming to a festival so that you can entertain me. I'm just going to observe. I'm not actually enacting it. I'm not moving through the wild and mad depths of my emotiveness. This is the disconnect, right? And I think in the disconnect is intentional. Like mainstream religious orders came in and they're like,
Yes.
these people are way too empowered, they're not my sheeple, they can't follow me, so we need to make this illegal. Women screaming, hair unbound,
This is
drink meat.
dangerous.
This
This
is
is dangerous
dangerous. Yeah,
behavior to society.
so this is mainstream Hinduism, like making tantra, the occult, outlawed. This is mainstream, maybe Islam, making Sufism kind of like, oh, those weirdos over there, right?
Well, in Filipino culture, I talked about when I looked about at the goddesses is how like Mayari is a moon goddess from the Philippines, but because of the Christianization of that, when the Spaniards came and conquered the Philippines, all of
Yeah,
the different islands had their own martial arts, and because of being conquered, they hid those martial arts within dance. So
yes,
there is
yes.
like a beautiful like connection there between your arts and
Yeah,
it being a very practical thing.
it is. But the mainstream religion, I think Christianity does this with so many pagan concepts, right? You slowly co-opt some,
Yeah.
and then you kind of like, oh, that's outlawed, that's, you're not of God if you do this, and if you like pray to the Black Madonna and blah blah
Mhm.
blah,
Mhm. Mhm.
other Christian concepts. And it makes it easier to like get people afraid because you've basically severed my direct connection with
Yeah.
the divine, and you've introduced a middleman. And like, how much
Yes.
do we love
Well,
middlemen?
I mean, ultimately, that's what most religions,
Mainstream, yeah,
most
religion.
mainstream, like I'll call it institute. Let's draw
Yeah,
that definition right now because even when I was talking about beauty in my other podcast, beauty and then the beauty industry, comic
yeah,
books and then the comic book industry. The
yeah,
idea of connecting with the divine and the industry that has been created around
yeah,
that.
yeah. You know, marriage and union and the institution of it. Yeah, yeah, it's like capital E for entertainment and
Yeah,
small e
yeah, yeah.
for,
So the entertainment, like Hollywood, the
yes,
entertainment industry,
yeah,
and us, like you as a kid, putting on a magic show for your family,
yes, exactly,
right?
exactly.
So,
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to introduce some of these, like what ancient festivals did, was to me, there was an enriched divine purpose as part of the festival in everyday life that was accessible to everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status. Like whether you were a noble or whether you were a farmer, did not matter. There, society created a place for you in the container of these festivals. And this is true even in theater, right? the like a lot of, Shakespeare plays, for example, have a chorus or a choir. Greek tragedies and comedies have that. Choirs are the in between what the audience is experiencing. They give more context, they hear the audience, and also do the same for whoever's on stage. So you have this almost like rainbow bridge, this sacred exchange happening between the choir, the performers on stage who are channeling characters, and the audience that is like the feminine, receptive, and also emotive, and also, throwing tomatoes if it's not good, and then just being ecstatic in emotion. And I and I
Yeah, I love that.
I'm like, how can you not be engaged? And I
Well,
watch TV like that today. Like, I'm like watching Doctor Who, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like talking to the screen. But most people are just like, oh yeah, that's cool. Oh yeah, it's hilarious. Right? Like, there's so many layers separating the
you and
obs-
I feel like are very I don't know if it's because we're 12th house people. I don't know what it, but like I feel like whenever like anything is like happening, like video game, like anything entertainment, like you're like in it. Like, why
fully.
are you doing that? What is happening? You're in there with them. Like, I'm in the movie with you, and I'm like, I'm there with you, and just like no different how like I cry very easily in movies. I cried in Pokemon the first movie,
Oh my
so
God. I still cry when Bambi's mother is shot
yeah,
because it's
it's
horrifying.
awful. It's
It's
awful. Yeah, and because and you're there, and the greatest art will take you there. And as you said, you're an active participant in it. You're not this passive like
yeah.
observer. And I feel like in one of these movies, there was also a this beautiful quote that I take with me, where when it comes to love, where the amount of love that you have for a person is when you lose them, you have to be okay with the equal amount of pain and grief that that loss will cause.
Yeah, because and this is like unconditional love. It is conditionless across space, time, and matter, right? So the three dimensions of 3D reality are space, time, and matter. So if I tell you, Rachel, I love you unconditionally, it means before you arrived, after you were gone, time. If you change your body, or if you leave and go somewhere else, space, and matter,
Mm,
the things you do, what you enact in the world.
yeah,
So I think in the spiritual communities, often it's like, oh, I love you unconditionally.
yeah.
But I'm like, do you, in three-dimensional reality where we interact, that has a certain meaning. I can't say with any confidence that I have learned to love unconditionally. I'm trying, but to love across space, time, and matter, like that's a lift, man.
It's that's also what when you're engaging with anything, right? I say this to my wolfie all the time, that it's going to be really hard for me to say goodbye to you,
Wolfie
right?
is Rachel's dog.
Yeah, my doggo. Yeah, but even with
Or
friendships,
also her an aspect of her soul.
yes, he's my
Her,
my companion,
yes.
in the world, my energetic ley line on some regards, right? And I think that any of the beings that we interact with, they're all like extensions of ourselves. So like, of course, like we do connect with them regardless. But there is, as you said, like in this framework, in this story, um, the love I have for you, Arthi, is not the same love that I have for like other. If it's a specific, so
Yeah.
it's hard to kind of quantify that and say that in a certain
Why
kind of
we have
way.
art.
That's why we have art, right? And that's why you have songs and you have all these things that like they touch you in a certain way and you're like, that is saying exactly how I feel. And there's
Yeah.
no other way for me to like tell
Express
you.
that. Yeah. And like I wanted so the I wanted to end this segment with, one more thought on this, and then like the last piece I wanted to end with. And it's this thing like sometimes our art is cooking for someone or doing a project with them,
Yeah.
even if it's collaging, right? Like art doesn't mean like you're actually standing in front of a 10-foot canvas painting,
This
or you're
pretentiousness around it, right? Of like
yeah,
what qualifies as art.
what qualifies as
Yeah.
art. And if art is you like cooking your kid's favorite meal, or like adding a little mint leaf in a kombucha that your friend likes, or like amazing, like that is a curate, like that is an experience that was produced. There's infinite value of love, right? And
Yeah.
to me, the role of the artist in ancient times was also sacred. So to me, it is. the role of the artist in any society is to be like, oh, this is where consciousness is at, like here. And
Mm.
again, this is not a good or bad or a limit, but society's consciousness is here. I'm going to paint what is beyond. I'm going to paint all of this, like the Monets and the Da Vinci's of the world that channeled art, technology, science, alchemy, math, and
Yeah.
imbued it into their creations, into their art. Like there's a reason we remember them 400, 500 years, 600 years after, and we may not remember the dude down the street who painted a really nice, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe
No, I know. Yeah.
that longevity. So it's this thing, right? Like the role of an artist is to help, is to support the step-by-step expansion, the illumination of consciousness, and or show what our shadow is. Hello everyone, this is everything you're ignoring, right?
Yes.
Like the
Yes.
or
Yes.
like the
Bring it
this
to
is
light. Bring it to
it's
the
like,
light. Yeah.
let us reclaim what we have denied, like the Salvador Dali's, maybe even the Picassos of the world, like some of those, because in art, like in oneness, all is included. So if I'm like, yeah, we're a rich, amazing society, let's ignore, I don't know, poor people or immigrants. And then, like, when someone paints that, you can't help but feel it in your gut. And
Mm.
so the role, and again, this is sacred work. So then you have the co-opting that I think we're now happily
Yes.
moving into our next segment around where this sacredness kind of got co-opted, the rise and fall of institutions, and where we've lost spirit production value as well as production value in actuality.
Oh,
So Rachel,
wow.
kick us off with segment two.
That was a great throw. Look at that, the production value and like, oh,
We're
truly a
so
word
organized.
witch. Like so taking it all back, there as you were talking, I had like my brain firing like, all these different like
Oh, do
so I'm
it,
like,
do it.
okay, so comparing it to today because we're streaming this live on Rumble and there's quite a few channels on Rumble I know that talk a lot about like what the heck is going on with Hollywood. Do you actually like what did you do to Star Wars? Why did you remake The Crow? Why is there a Gladiator 2 with Jay-Z hip hop on it? Why are you doing this? And um it all comes down to there's a couple of things, right? There's the rise of streaming, there's social media, there's all these different ways by which the way in which we take in, absorb entertainment has
Yeah.
changed. It's less of like me and my friends going to the movies was such a thing when you're in high school, right? When you're
Tuesdays.
underage, right? And then
Oh
so
my
like
God.
you can't go to like anywhere. So it's just like, oh, you're gonna go to the movies, and even more than that, like there's like an arcade in front. So like
Popcorn,
yeah, just the whole
production. Yeah.
experience of it, and even in the theater, like the lights all going off, and then like some of the IMAX ones even too, like the boom and the sound, and just like
Mhm.
whoa, you're like immersed and you're in it, right?
Yeah.
So and then for that moment, no one's on your phone, no one's checking things, no one's doing anything. You're just
We didn't have
watching
phone. Did we even
the
have
movie. No, we didn't have pay phones. I remember pay phones. One of my
phone?
friends had a pager, I remember. And we were like, whoa. That's just because your
I
parents want to keep
yeah.
track of you. So that was great. You told your parents, like, I'm going here with people. Bye. And then, and then immersing. I remember seeing Fast and the Furious, the first movie, with my
Right.
friends. And I don't know if people know this about me, but I used to be like an import car model back in the day. So those import tuner things and like cars and souping up all that. So that was what Fast and the Furious was about. It was about the cars. Now, Fast and the Furious, it's about
10.
family. 10 and it's just not they
Weird. Yeah.
what the why Fast and the Furious existed was to like you're talking about the cars and street racing and like what that was really about, and then you just took that and then you built a franchise around that. So now you have Fast and Furious 10, you have Star Wars remake, you have Gladiator again, because where are the original, no one wants to take a risk on an original story because you want to
Oh,
already have the audience there that yeah.
why? So, in your opinion, why is that? Like, it's not like we've run out of stories to tell.
No, we haven't. No. And also like that idea that it's really only 5 stories that you're
Right.
remixing or you're hybriding stuff. But I look at this like The Crow, for example, and that might be a good way for us to segue into why they're co-opting certain stories, because The
Yeah.
Crow's a very, I did a whole expose about, because Brandon Lee is in my book, The Dragon Warriors, right? And it's when you're dealing with art and these concepts of like the other realms in the space of fiction, you can really go there without, I guess, upsetting people, I suppose. With The Crow, it was very upsetting because The Crow is a mantle. You didn't have to do Brandon Lee's version of The Crow.
Yeah.
You could have. There's a Crow 2 and 3 and 4, right? There's a show. There was a show.
Yeah, like
Remember?
the Batmans are redone every few
Yeah,
years because it's
yeah,
the mantle. Yeah.
yes, yeah. But also, like, you could have done also Batman. I mean, Nightwing's run as Batman if you wanted to go there. Also, you could have done different storylines with Batman, like The Killing Joke or other stories, right? But they love to do just the origin story over and over and over and over again. I love, for whatever reason. But regardless, as you said, it is a mantle, and The Crow is like that, is a mantle, because the idea of The Crow is the spirit of vengeance in the sense of setting the wrong things right. And so a very wrong thing was done to Eric Draven and his girlfriend. They were killed, and his girlfriend was like tortured, and so the cosmic power of all was going to right a wrong, and the Crow is an agent of that balance, right? And so even though it's very dark and he does these horrible things, he's an agent for what is right. And so dealing with those concepts of like anti-hero, it not looking quite so much like the horse, like I'm a white shining knight, but it's about love. That story really is about love. He does all that because he lost the love, like it's the love between the two, and you never see her in the movie until the end,
Yeah,
when
she does. Yeah.
yeah, and after he does everything,
Yes.
he reconnects with her. He does his mission and his spirit reconnects. So like, why did you have to redo that? Oh, because now when someone looks at The Crow, you're going to see this 2024 version and not look at Brandon Lee's version, which
And
has a
I
truth
think
in
it's
it.
so it's it's interesting, right? I was explaining to a non-comic book person. I was like, "Oh, this is what The Crow is about." And they were like, "Oh, so it's like The Punisher." And I was like, "No, it's not. The Crow, Brendan Lee's
Mm.
Crow, is satisfied once vengeance is complete. Like there's a beautiful completion because yeah, superficially if you look at it, you're like, "Oh, he's super angry his girlfriend died and so the crow came." But if you actually know crow medicine, that's that's actually not what
And
it
Eric
is. Yeah,
Raven, right?
Raven,
This idea of
Raven, yeah,
like the
exactly.
blackbirds as being like the messengers between the underworld and our world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the creatures that are the stewards of natural law. So, yes, his girlfriend died on a personal level. That is a massive tragedy. On a transpersonal level, love and innocence were attacked. And
Yes.
so there is a natural cycle of justice. This is like, when the spirit of the goddess Kali is invoked. She
Yes.
doesn't keep destroying the earth. After vengeance is complete, which is what happens in The Crow, it is complete. He actually, I think he reunifies back with Shelley, who is the girlfriend. And like there, and it completes not on a happy note, but there's a sense of, okay, I've run my course of vengeance. Now it's complete. The Punisher just keeps going on, right? Like he always finds a new reason to a new horrible thing to keep enacting his vengeance. It's a different story. It's a different
Mm.
mantle, a whole slew of problems. But The Crow is so beloved because there is a charge of emotion. There is like great horror, and you get to see a completion story. It's actually beautiful. And Brendan Lee's rendition of it, for those who don't know, Brendan Lee, the actor, he died during the making of The Crow, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Like,
And
yeah.
there's so much. So like that's the multi-layered meaning of movies, right? Where there's The Crow, right? That movie, but there's also the story of the making of that movie, right? And so we wouldn't have John Wick if Brandon Lee didn't die, because that actor, the stuntman who played Brandon Lee in this, you wouldn't have, and also 1993, those special effects, you have no idea which scenes are Brandon and which scenes are not. In
They
1993.
did a
So
great job.
like yeah, so like if you're saying like that's, and why is CGI worse now when it comes to certain things?
Yeah, actually, the scene Rachel and I quickly discussed. I recently saw a Return of the Jedi, the 1970s, 80s. You know, the old
Let me,
like the old
while you're
movie.
talking, I'm gonna pull that
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
See if we
Go
can
for
do
it.
that.
So the last scene of Return of the Jedi is, the Death Star is destroyed, the Emperor is dead.
And they're
Um,
like dancing on like Endor.
yeah,
Yay, we
everyone's
did
dancing.
it.
Ewoks are there. So Luke joins. He hugs Leia. He like whatever high fives Han Solo, and then he turns around and he sees the spirit force of Yoda, the spirit force of Ben Kenobi, and in the original he saw the spirit force of his father Darth Vader, who is the actor that played Darth Vader, big bald guy. Just literally, we saw him a few scenes before because when he took off the helmet, he
To build.
sees his father.
Discover
Everyone's like
dozens of
waving to
AI
him.
tools on
Whatever,
Wix
it
Studio.
ends. The current version on Disney has that Darth Vader actor replaced with Hayden Christensen, right? Like Anakin Skywalker when he's whatever 30, and at first I was like, oh, that's cute because that's Anakin as we know him. But if you actually think about it from the perspective of Luke Skywalker, he doesn't know what his dad looked like when he was 30. Why is he there? Also, the CGI is so weird, right? Because the
Oh my gosh,
puppet,
let me see if we can pull that up. I
yeah,
have it. And you know what? Like I'm looking at it and like
it's
and
weird.
even Luke's face looks a little
It's the faces are weird. The express, like it's like someone's looking off in a different angle, and I'm like, what? All of the effort it took to redo that one scene, really? Like,
I've never okay, hold on. I'm like I've never shared a screen with
never
this
should have.
this version. Okay, here. Let's see. Ooh.
Ooh, this is
Okay.
fun.
This looks kind
You
of
got
cool. Oh, we're like a real show. Okay, let me just change my little scene on OBS so you guys can see it properly.
yeah.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I think the volume on your thing is muted for the video, which I think is fine because it's honestly like watch the eye movement, like
I'll add the audio if we need to
or
later.
yeah.
Let's go through it. But see, look at his face. Why does it look like that? Like it's very plastic looking. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Okay, so they're having celebrations. Let's see what this. Can you hear that, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let me go a little
Yeah,
further. A little further. A lot of
actually those scenes were added too. I don't know if you noticed.
oh yeah, you can
So
tell.
there's like a celebration in Naboo. There's celebrations on like Kashyyyk and all the. So I think this is all the other planets that got added in after because those
Ah,
the landscape of those planets didn't exist in 1970 when they were doing this, right?
that's true. Like especially like Naboo and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Let's see if I can.
yeah, it's after the hugging. Yeah, it's around here.
Oh, I love it. Okay. Go here.
Yeah,
And then I'm gonna cut the audio
yeah,
here just so.
yeah. So,
Aww, I love this part though.
it's so fun. It's
So
really.
all hugging, all happy, everyone's good, and then like weird.
I also think some of these are added. I don't remember the scene being that long when I
I
watched it.
agree with you. Yeah, I don't think it was that long either.
This is original and this is different.
Yes.
But he's looking in another direction.
Let's go back and look at that.
Yeah.
It's
He's
just like they didn't even. Okay, so it's here, and they're like, "Oh, yay!"
right. It, like again,
He's not even acknowledging them.
yeah, right. It's like I guess it's cute, but like, is it though? Also, in the story, it doesn't make sense. Luke doesn't know what his father looks like when the father is young. He just saw him like 20 minutes ago, old and bald and automatoned.
He's
Vader.
gonna be like, "Who's this guy?"
Yeah. Yeah, I
like,
find the whole thing quite strange. And then it's this thing, well, if they change this, and like this is the thing, yeah, you have this beloved story. Star
yeah.
Wars means so much to so many
Oh
people,
yeah.
and there is brilliance in it, right? Like George Lucas was friends with Joseph Campbell, right? Like care of the soul guy,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
All of this. And so there's a lot of beauty here. But what else did they change and why did they change it? So this is
Dun
the
dun
whole co-opting
dun.
thing that Rachel, I feel you speak to really beautifully.
Oh yes. So let me just flip to my other screen. We'll talk
Yeah.
about this for a little bit, and then we'll bring back, I think, the other screen share. Let me just stop sharing for a second. Okay, so to talk about that, and I wore a special shirt today in honor of what we're going to talk. The force is strong with this one, because I truly believe that they came after Star Wars. Not just Star Wars though; they came after a lot of stories, even stories that I feel like they came after
Gladiator.
Yeah, Gladiator. We'll get into that in just a minute, but She-Ra they came after long ago, right? When they redid She-Ra the cartoon, they made her like they changed a lot of stuff in the cartoon itself, and I don't know, they just anyways, the point is that they've rewritten stories instead of creating net new stuff, right? In Star Wars itself, the idea of the Force, these concepts, they're universal, right? And that's the best stories. The best stories tap into like the universal cosmic story of everything and are telling almost like this saga, this piece of it that all of us can relate to because like we're all part of it, right? And that's why we all celebrate because we like it's us, right? So I feel like when they tinker with certain points of the story, especially parts that when you were a kid and you're you're creating a mental model of what magic looks like, what superpowers look like, what a friend group looks like, all this stuff in your own models of stuff, and you start to play with certain aspects that at an intrinsic base level start to shift things ever so slightly. There's also this is strange thing that I think that happens cognitively where you're no longer getting the full magical message of the story as a whole. So it's also like overly synthesizing things into being the pieces of what they are. So like is it Star Wars because it has lightsabers and Jedi and because you say all these things, or is it Star Wars because it's
The cosmic force and the living force and the interplay between.
yeah, like the mythology that for you to tell a story, you need to create a world for it to exist in.
Exactly. And there's a lot
Yes.
of cool parts of the Star Wars universe that are not fleshed out, right? So you have like the Sith, which is the dark force, fine. You have like the Jedi, that's the light force. And there's this whole Star Wars Rebels has this for in a few episodes. There's something called the Bendu, which is the neutral
Mm.
force,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
the characters introduced in the context, and it's they actually do it so well in Rebels. This Bendu character is he's kind of like neutral qigong master. He's like a big being, and he's introduced in the context of a Jedi's like, "Well, help us," and the Sith is like, "Hey, I need this," and then
Mm.
the Bendu is like, "What is happening? Like, why are you here on my planet? Like, literally leave me alone."
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
he has like an emotional reaction, and then he foretells of something, right? And it's like two or three
I love that idea of neutrality.
the idea of
Uh,
neutrality,
Kevin has
right?
this
Like,
beautiful line that from Lord of the Rings that he loves to quote, you know, with the trees, and they're trying to like get him in on the war, and the trees are like, "Side? I'm on no side.
the ends, yeah.
No one's on my side, so I'm not on anyone's side. What side, right?" So that's the idea of like, and even
Yeah,
with my comic book reads, depending on where you're standing, who's the
yeah.
villain, like who's the dark and who's the light. And I think what they're playing with, uh, let's call it the entertainment complex industry, whatever you want to call it, uh,
Masters.
the powers that aren't.
Yeah, the
We're not
powers.
call That's what I call them a lot because I think
I
it's too
love
good to
that.
call them the powers that be because like come on now
They don't
you don't
be.
have any, you need us mainly for all of
Yeah.
this stuff. So I truly think, and thank goodness we're on Rumble for this kind of thing, but children, all of us, we all have this, but it's more powerful in children. The imagination engine,
Yeah.
right? The you can build worlds. You can do like anyone can. I'm doing it right now with Dragon Warriors. You can build entire worlds. We build worlds all the time, like workplace worlds for ourselves and the persona of how we play that game. So all of this exists, and kids especially use stories to build out worlds for themselves and
Yeah.
flesh it all out. And so then as you like get older, you as a cosmic force universe get to bounce off of other cosmic force universes. And then Star Wars, because it's an opera, tends to encompass a lot of perhaps ideas from different disparate part like consciousnesses in one kind of like opera. So you have multiple stories in one story, which is not in that's an epic, right? Versus something that's like one episode of something. But what the entertainment evil, I'll call them evil, they're evil, has done is you're taking tropes, and C.S. Lewis in one of the Narnia books does talks about this, where the kids come back to Narnia, and Aslan, the lion, is now known as evil, and
Oh,
the evil queen is known as like the good queen,
yeah.
and the kids are like, but it's all horrible, right? Anyways, but they're
Yeah.
calling it like, oh, this is great, like, and this is, and I'm like, and the kids are like, what? Where's Aslan? They're like, oh, Aslan's evil.
Mm.
He's been like put in this place because of all the horrible stuff that he's done, and then like, it's like, what are you talking
Yeah,
about?
it's like when like countries like rewrite history a little bit to make themselves be like, oh, we won the war. And it's like,
Yeah, no, like, and I saw a meme once where it was like, oh, look at the history book. Somehow the good guys win every time.
yeah,
And
yeah.
everything's always done like perfectly well because the victors tell
The
the
stories.
story, right? And yeah.
Yeah. You know what? The children and imagination thing is big. There's like I think in 2006 or something, Nickelodeon came out with Avatar Last Airbender, the cartoon. Fantastic. It is amazing. I did not watch this as a child. I watched this like in my 30s, probably seen it 8 times,
I,
right? Because the elements, and again, it's one of those, it it touches on a lot of aspects of like qigong and different.
mhm.
I'm not going to get all the names right.
Japanese
There's not
anime
as
though,
much
like love
love.
mythology. Love.
It's
They love to
amazing.
entrench it into their animes. It's
It's
a beautiful
entrenched
thing.
into
Yeah.
everything. You eat. There's 3 seasons. Each season is a chapter on an element. So there's earth, water, and fire because it's the last Airbender, and how the air element is learned. The adaptive element is like figuring out the other three. And he's 12, right? He's a child.
I feel like you probably relate to,
I do.
yeah,
I
being an
like
air, sign yourself.
being an Airbender
Yeah,
myself.
no,
Um,
100%.
Right. No, and like it's so funny, right? Because like the book in the Nickelodeon show, the book on Earth and the book on Fire are the hardest for me because air and water are easier for me, and then these other two are hard. And so there are these episodes where I'm just like, "Oh my God, this is literally my life." Right? And it's so interesting. It's like, "Oh, the airbender in you avoids standing, rooting and confronting an issue." And it's like, yeah, the air element in me wants to like try a little trick. Let's just try this another way. Let's flip perspectives. But
But
it's
see,
like,
like
no,
that message coming through the last Airbender is not the same as,
powerful.
yeah, as it, that
But
yeah, go on. Sorry.
but in the co-option of it, so they just came out with the live action, and I
Oh yeah.
honestly I was excited, right? Like, so there's scenes
You
that
were,
are
sorry, you were excited or you weren't
I
excited?
was
Oh,
excited because
oh.
I want to see what's up. As
Oh,
soon as
that's
it
sweet.
started,
I'm so jaded. I'm like, oh, you're gonna ruin it.
yeah. So 5 minutes into it, I'm like, oh no. So they have ever so I'm gonna say this, it's not bad,
Okay.
but they have ever so slightly diluted the highest expression of each of these characters. Everyone
Ooh.
is slightly less expressed. It's almost like we don't want you to be so every archetype, every character is a full flesh, like the fire, like Zuko, the fire element. He is fiery, he's angry, he's impatient. His reclamation arc in understanding the responsibility of being the carrier and the manifester of all things fire, being a
Mhm.
leader, sorting out his shame, has
Mhm.
to go through all of this. In the live action, he does that, but at maybe 70% of his capacity. The full emotive expression of all of the main characters, there's this beloved
It's like
character.
tampered
It's
down or like
diluted.
brought
Yeah,
down. Hmm.
yeah. So there's this like wise yin, like almost like a favorite, General Iroh. He
Mm.
is just wise and funny, but he's like water and fire. He's an exceptional fire bender. And he uses humor and levity, and he's gone through great pain. But in the live action, they've made him slightly less funny, slightly less, a bit more worried, a bit more concerned. And I was like, wow, interesting, because maybe in a live action that is more relatable. But the magic, it's good if you want to be entertained. If you want to sever from what you're watching and just like eat your popcorn, your ice cream, your chips, and be like, I am watching Airbender, I am enjoying it, amazing, great.
You
Like,
know, actually, that is, I know that's not necessarily on our show notes, but the idea of live actioning animation is like,
why?
whoa. Like,
Why?
um, I will say one thing though. Are you familiar with One Piece at all?
Yes,
Okay, so the live action of that actually I thought was really sweet.
I loved the live
It
action.
was
I'm
really
sorry.
good.
It
Like
was,
Nami in that is like Pastel loves Nami, by the way. Like
yeah, yeah,
who's and her like idea of the stick and her weapon is like make it like Nami. So I'm like, yeah, I love Nami, and Nami's they did such a great job in the live action of not trying to make it real. You
yes.
know, like it's
He stretches
ridiculous.
that.
It's like the concept is freaking ridiculous, but that's the point, right? And also, I say this with Sailor Moon too. Like the fact you have time to yell out your attack and like
Yes, yes, 100%.
super punch and then just doing it, like it's that, like keeping that in the live action, as like the critique was like, oh, this is just like the anime and it's just fan service. I'm like, but what would be the point other than to do that with the live action? Because then otherwise just tell a whole new story.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Like unless, like, I guess maybe you could do something in the live action where, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that, like live action versus
I mean,
animation?
so I didn't watch the cartoon of One Piece, the animated. I only watched the live action, and
Me
now
too,
obviously
me too. My friend Pastel said that uh it was close but no
right,
cigar, but she also said that if they didn't do it justice, that the One Piece fans would literally kill them, like
but
come after them and kill them, like if they
right,
didn't keep certain aspects of what those characters were. So
yeah. I mean, so I I might watch a movie or a show like a live action. I think it's like an audience thing, right? Like maybe you'd reach a certain wider audience with live action than you would
mm,
with anime, maybe. So I can't really comment because I haven't seen both. But Airbender, like there was a good way to do it by maintaining it, or you can just tell different aspects of the story, like what happens to the airbender after that adventure, right? Like when the show ends, the movie could have begun, the live action could have begun, right? Like you can, there's cool things to do, right, that actually like support what came before, that kind of honor what came before.
that's a
But,
great way to put
right,
it.
like,
Yeah.
so so this is where, and like I wanted to ask you, to me all of this is like a follow the money thing, like where, and this is so opposite to like sacred art, sacred exchange artists, and the sanctum of festival and liminal. This is
Yes.
not that. So like we're all obviously chasing money here, and we're chasing consumption. There's a hunger for
You know,
connection to the divine, and we're
yeah.
filling it. Like what's going on here? Can
I
you
think you brought upon it like this. It's almost like these things are separate, right? Like this, I'm making money and being successful and creating value, let's say, in one part. And then over here is like, I'm connecting to the divine. This is sacred work.
yeah,
Therefore, I'm a starving artist. So, because it's all love, right? And I should just give myself to everyone. And I'm an artist, and like I don't need money. I'm sustained on my art. Like that kind of concept is like, so are you selling out by now getting paid, and you created a franchise? And so where is that line of the selling out, right? And to me, I feel like that's all like a personal thing for every individual who considers themselves an artist. I think everyone's an artist, but where your work gets funded and gets value from it, I think that all of us need to take the same creative viewpoint in how we actually get funded, or how should I put this? Where the work and the art is an Ouroboros in our society, where it's not a thing where we touched on this on, I think, on our pilot episode, where I have this idea for a book, and then now I sell my script, and then because I sold it, I have lost now creative control over decisions on things, right? Like there was something where they're remaking Time Bandits. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie. Terry Gilliam. Oh my gosh, you need it. Terry Gilliam's amazing. So Terry Gilliam, like apparently they remade Time Bandits into a show, and he apparently came on the set and was like, "This is shit," and like left. I love Terry Gilliam. He did Brazil. He did Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. He
Oh,
did.
right,
So he
right.
does
Okay.
a really great job of like really dealing with imagination, dream realms, and perspectives like that.
Right,
And so
right.
him as a creator, like he's been kind of blackballed by Hollywood recently because he hasn't wanted to go along with all of what's happening.
Oh, so he must be amazing and incredible, and we should all watch
Yes, we should. I would love to get, maybe we can get Terry Gilliam on the show to talk
him.
about.
Nice new perspective.
Yeah, no, exactly. But it's that though, right? Like, why are you remaking Never Ending Story? Why are you doing this? Like, and
Yeah.
I know why they're doing this to mess with our inner children. And each of us has an inner child that like dreams and believes and all this stuff. And the magicians, they
It's
have it.
connected to the divine and channels it, and they want to force a middleman to edit, curate, direct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they need us to build the world, right? Promethea talks about this, right? Where it's like, oh, they're afraid of me because I'm going to bring about the end of the world, but it's not the world. I'm there. It's just this world, their world, and you just need to do that so you can build the new. And that's really what I'm feeling right now with Hollywood. It's just like this time of how things used to be done with the big studios, and you need all this funding to make a movie and all. You really don't have to do that anymore. There's a lot you can do with editing software. There's a lot of tools available to like me when production show like that weren't available before, and that's why you need a lot of the funding, because you need to pay for all of these things, right? But now that that's not there anymore, I think people need to reframe where value is ascribed. Like, why do some of these movies cost so much money and the story is shit, right? And then you have like a little indie film,
Yeah.
right? That like because it's got a good story gets made and like it goes like, but it's all that just needs to be relooked at, perhaps just blown up completely. And I think each individual person, if you want to make something, if you're a poet, if you're like want to make a movie, if you, this is the time to do it and connect with other creators who are also doing things and figure out where our skills can fit into each other. And then someone, likely Capricorn people, will be good at the whole like distribution part of it, right? But the point is to have different, like I'm a Taurus, you're an air sign. That's why like for our show, like I like to do all this like the other stuff that maybe isn't seen perhaps but is a foundational part of it, but also you with the words and like the all of those different skill sets all
Yeah.
naturally find their place. And I think that it I don't know, like the bad guy in this whole story, whatever is messing with everything, is aware of the danger that certain stories invoke in people. If people relate to a certain character who is going up against the powers that aren't, and you're starting to relate with this person, and and they're in a body that like for example Captain America, right? When you're saying like you relate to Captain America, and I, like or Captain Planet, I relate to that. Like, they don't look anything like you, but that's not the point.
That's the point. Yeah.
It's not the point.
I've never looked at Captain America and I'm like, I can't relate because he has green hair. Never
Yeah,
did that ever cross my mind.
but that's what this place has like become, right? Even with a lot of the voice acting with
Yeah.
animations, right? Being like, does the animated black character need to be spoken, voiced by a
Exactly.
black actress, or it should just be the voice? Like, I don't.
Like you mean in a stereotypical way,
In a
right?
stereotypical way, I think. How should I put this?
So actually, I have a weird. I actually don't know how the story is going to land. So I didn't grow up in Canada, and I think the year
It's
I
good
did,
that you didn't for this
well, for
conversation because you bring a different perspective,
completely,
right?
yeah, and so when Phantom, so I saw Phantom Menace since we were talking about Star Wars. I think the year I was coming to Canada,
So that's
and
1999. I've marked this in time space because it's important to the what did someone call this in TikTok? They called it Rachel lore.
Yes,
In your lore. Yeah.
yes. So, or like I think maybe it came out and maybe I saw it like a bit later, but I remember seeing Phantom Menace and then coming here, coming to Canada, and then someone and I actually really liked Phantom Menace.
Yeah, me too.
Um, yeah, it was different. It was sweet, whatever. I was speaking to somebody who was like, "Oh my God, the racism is so unbearable," and I'm like, "Oh no." Where's their racism? I didn't notice.
Oh.
And he was like, "Oh, the Jar Jar Binks character, that's so stereotypical black person." And I'm like, "I don't know any black person who speaks like that. Who do you know?" And it was this weird Rorschach moment where to that person, like that character spoke like a particular race, but like I literally knew no one. Maybe I just never met people from a certain subculture, because in the Middle East most people who are black are like Nigerian or South
Mm-hmm.
African. They're from Africa,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
nobody speaks like that. So I get like maybe there's like a Caribbean thing, but that's not what
Yeah.
I heard, right? Like I didn't hear that because I've never heard that stereotype before. So was it intentionally? Did they just pick a person? Because the guy who actually does the actual acting in the voice for Jar Jar Binks, does like a bunch of other things too, where he doesn't
Mm-hmm.
sound like
Yeah, like voice actors. They're voice actors, so they're
that. Like, yeah. So it's this really funny play depending on like where you were. So it's yeah,
yeah.
so
That's an
like
You know, that's you bring about something that came up, I think, about like a year ago with fantasy. I
okay.
think that there was this big thing saying that like there was outrage because people thought that the orcs were like basically like black people.
I
But I'm like,
heard
how is that possible if there are
how
black humans? I don't understand. Like, what do you
well,
mean? Why are you equating that? No one is equating that except for you, who
yes.
is feeling that. But and perhaps that's something for you to
To
look
look
at.
at, like look at why this is a thing. Yeah,
Because
exactly.
literally, I've read tons of fantasy novels where, like, if you're fantasy people out in the middle of the desert, you're gonna be a brown person, you're a brown human being.
Exactly, exactly. Oh my god. Yeah, it's like, oh, the Fremen in Dune, they all have their head covered, and I'm like, have you been to a
You're
desert?
in the
I've lived
desert.
in the desert for like years. If you want to have hair and skin, you cover it. I'm sorry, you just do. You don't just like leave it like this. It's not oppressive. It's sand gets everywhere.
Yes, yes. As Anakin said in Star Wars, I hate sand. It gets everywhere. The
It
dial.
gets everywhere. Well, on the notion of like the politics of entertainment, right? One of the like to me, a lot of this is like like broadcasting, like to cast. So you have
Ooh, nice,
to me, there's like a
nice.
magical frequency and
Well, even
around.
Hollywood, right? Hollywood, it's literally a wand. Like it's
Oh, wood. So the
Holly.
holly tree is often used in wand making in many cultures, obviously temperate zone cultures where holly grows.
So Hollywood.
Yeah, right. So there's this magic broadcasting, spell casting to the masses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're now like entranced into this. And I know that it's not in our show notes, but like Rachel and I have this funny, weird thing in common where we both like really loved rom-coms. And then there was this era where it was just not cool,
Yeah.
where fantasy and romance were like not cool. It was more cool to have strife and to like fight and assert power struggle
Strong
across
women.
man.
I don't need
I
to.
don't need no man, like whatever that vibe is. I don't need you. I'm alone, which is like, not in divine union in how I understand it. I think how you understand it, and so, the reclamation of love stories in
Yeah.
all of the forms, right?
Yes.
Like, and this
Yes.
isn't a love story about genders and like, oh, this, that, and like it doesn't have to be Romeo and Juliet fighting against their families. There are so many untold love stories
Yeah.
that
Oh, that's a
oh,
beautiful thing to say. Yeah. I say that about there are so many beautiful songs just waiting to be danced to. There are so many beautiful like stories being waiting to be told, and
yeah,
we keep using these old like, and there's nothing wrong with Star Wars. There's nothing wrong with these stories, but the point is that they have been told already, and you're supposed to take the juice of that and create something new with it. And that is what how we pass the baton on to the next generation to then take that and then they make something new on it, and then it just
Yeah,
keeps going, and
exactly.
it's
I think
beautiful.
one of the things we did want to talk about was
Oh,
how funding, especially in Canada,
oh
affects
yes.
music, broadcasting, and even the arts, because both of us live here and we have definitely seen the soar decline and the suffocation, the very intentional suffocation of the true expression of, again, that role of the artist, right?
That's a great throw to our segment 3. And I think reclaiming entertainment, and yeah, the idea of funding is really part of that as well, right? Because
Gotta eat.
you gotta eat. You gotta, how does anything get done in like the material realm, right? It needs to be, I mean, like, oftentimes that's why a lot of people end up, I thought I lost my soul in it, right? You work for a
Yeah,
corporation and you like
yeah.
lose like your, like what you're trying to do, and it just gets caught up in all these other decisions, and you're like, now I don't even recognize it anymore. So how does one, and it's not about holding on to the initial version of what the creation is, because this is even like bringing this around to me creating the Dragon Warriors and my own production company to support it instead of just going and getting a grant from the government, even though I would probably check a lot of boxes, right? Because I'm a woman. I am half South African. I'm half Filipino. I was born in the prairies, right? So
You're not the federal government's definition of marginalized,
no, I'm not.
right?
I'm not, right? And it's really interesting because in this country, the only time I've ever experienced racism is when people thought I was Aboriginal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've learned now too. I've had a little message from the earth, and she's like, "But child, you are."
Yeah, I mean, we're all indigenous to some.
Child, you are an Aboriginal. Like, you are. What do you mean you're not? I'm like, oh, but I'm not. But at the same time, like, but I was born here. I was formed in the prairies in this land, even though my mother is from the islands and my father's from Africa, right? And all of us have our own unique
Yeah.
story of what that is, and it matters. There's nuance in it, and that nuance freaking matters, right? And to blanket it and be like, I'm a Pacific Islander, or
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
not enough. There's not enough with the tags for it to fully express the beauty and gamut of what each individual human being is. And art does that. And what I've seen now with grants is that they have actually done, we can have this in a part 2 because I have all the documents as to what they've actually changed with all of it. Because I get it, artists, you need, like, how are you supposed to work on your art and then live and pay rent and do all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff as well? But at the same time, there has to be a way to do it, because people will pay for entertainment,
Mm,
right? And that's where I think artists need to realize that,
yeah.
to not be so like, okay, it's beautiful, it's perfect, but realize how it's going to be received. And in
But
you being,
beautiful and perfect to who? The power, like, if something is beautiful to me and maybe not beautiful to the powers that aren't, or
mm,
the reverse, right? This is where I think,
mm,
and I don't know if it's fair to put pressure on the artists who are, obviously trying to make art, but also pay rent and like live their life and whatever. But because you then have to be like, this is what I want to create, but I need to pay August's rent. So I'm gonna make the thing, maybe like edit myself, co-opt myself, forget about sacredness,
mm.
forget about what's at the edge of consciousness, because that doesn't sell, right? And like, I think we have a little clip for that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And this clip comes from the live action Witcher, the show, the
Oh
Netflix
yes,
show.
yes. Let me
So
pull that up.
the
Do you want to play?
character,
Do you want to play that from the beginning, or
yeah, it's actually, the dialogue is right in the beginning.
okay?
So
Let's do
I'll just
it.
give a little preamble to,
Preamble while I cue it up.
yes. So the Witcher and the Bard. So the Bard is the musician. He has a little lute, and the Witcher has gone on. They've gone on this adventure, and it's a very political kind of adventure. They're captured by a group of marginalized people, and then they're let go. The marginalized people are elves, and in the narrative of the show, the elves are basically like, they're kind of like, oh, there's the humans are at war with the elves.
Mm.
So that's the bard on screen right now, and basically the elves, instead of killing them, they let them go. And
Hmm.
Jaskier is trying to like compose a tune, and he's trying to tell what happened, but he's a musician and he's an artist and he knows that it's not going to sell. And so he says,
Oh my gosh, hold on. I missed my cue, sorry.
no, no,
Respect doesn't make history.
Respect doesn't make history.
And then,
And
like,
so
it was like
he
a mic drop
changed.
moment.
So his song is about how Geralt fought the evil elves, and that's not what happened. And Geralt's face, you can see here.
Yeah, he's just like, wait a minute.
Right?
I like the song though too.
I love it, but the whole song's a lie. That's like the joke in The Witcher, right? Because it's like he's gonna like he fought the elves. He didn't fight the elves. The elves almost killed him, bound him, gagged him, and then let him go. They showed mercy, but the song twists it because the bard has an agenda, and he needs the people to love The Witcher, and then he gets coin.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he needs a hero. You got to build a hero, right? And people love heroes. So
yeah, and so a merciful villain, that's not going to sell in papers.
No, and or Shades of Grey, and like the idea that like perhaps you're getting into very complex context like stories there instead of being like, this is the hero, he beat the bad guy, yay, you win, awesome. That being said, though, there is truth in that.
Yeah. I don't think the bard is bad or wrong for it. I think as artists do, they are a reflection of what already is. Yes. And the bard is doing that, right? In this scene, in this little scene.
To your
I love the song so much. All right. So I think did we still want to talk about like reality TV and production? And
I think we can leave that because what are we? We're at 6. Oh my gosh, we went for a while.
Time
flies. What is time? What is time?
So we wanted to end segment 3 with this notion of reclaiming entertainment. So I wanted to just do, and we have to make this quite short. But so Rachel is like, Rachel and her husband run Gold Sugar Production.
Yes.
Quantum Play Studios is like her and I. And when I say her and I, it's like 90% her, 10% me.
Oh, please, Aria. That's not... like, no, I would say Quantum Play Studios is kind of like a sandbox. Yeah. A sandbox within Golden Sugar Productions. Because Golden Sugar Productions, the way I put it, and this is I'll throw out to you guys out there on Rumble, if you want some extra sauce and spice and this kind of fun stuff into your production value, to contact me, because I do feel like I do have a calling. When I worked with you, Aria, like at the hospital, I was a digital project manager, right? And what is a project manager other than you're taking, like, it's my name on the project and I'm the one who's like making certain decisions, but like other people are developing it, they're building it, right? Other people are doing the art for it. You're like conducting it, right? So it's a matter of raw energy and raw talent and taking that to a level that it can be seen and polished and all that kind of good stuff. And it's not just for if you have funding. It's not just if you are part of a major studio or like I'm an actor or I'm a paid whatever it is. In this new world, each of us is our own like show. And I think we talked about this, Aria, about how like Earth, this planet, is like the best show, the like highest ticket in the cosmos. Everyone's waiting to see how this ascension's going to turn out. Like, are people going to do it? Are you going to finally get out of this loop where you're just disempowered? Or are you going to finally step up to what it means to be a human being and be a steward of this planet? So I think that's really, I feel like all of us as children of the earth, our art is how we speak about our own personal relationship to the divine, to each other, and how we are able to express our inner world. Yeah. 100%. And do it justice, right? Because like it's not always going to come out like I look at some old writings, I'm like, oh my gosh. But not to make it all about social media, but I will say one thing about social media is that it has created this pressure that even though things aren't ready yet to be put on stage, that you like, I need to show that I'm doing something. Like, I need to, like, show that my progress. You don't need to show anything. It can just stay behind this, like, curtain until you can come out and just, that you can only make one grand appearance, right? And that can be with many ideas as well. So you deserve to have the sparkle and the audience for what it is you have to say, because they're there, even though this construct will have you thinking that it's not. And so
It's not for you. It's not really achievable, or you have to like steal limelight from other people.
yeah, or you have to play these dirty games, or
Yeah.
like the
Play the
game.
algorithm. Yeah.
Yeah, the game of the industry. Like uh, I've modeled a lot. I have actually been in quite a few like commercials and things like this as well. Like when I first moved to Toronto, Aria, it was a totally different landscape. Actually, I was able to. I went to auditions randomly because they were just like here, but now it's very gate kept.
It's very,
It's
everything is very exclusive, or you have to go to school for it, or you have to like be on Instagram at 11:02 when the call comes. Like it's, yeah, the barriers are a lot higher.
yes.
I will say this as like as someone who's helped me with production stuff. Rachel is an amazing, obviously, creator and actor, but she's also a really supportive producer. I don't I found that even in like your interactions with me, like helping me get stuff on board. So our email, if you're interested, is todaysharmonics@gmail.com. Certainly would love to hear from you about any part of this show or previous episodes if you are interested, or what you want us to pull apart, because we're really good at taking a subject and like, as we've done today, kind of like ripping into it, and everything we share is our like lived and honest experience, and it comes from us, and our idea isn't like listen to us and agree, but like that we can have these conversations as friends do, to try and break apart those layers and those curtains of illusions that are
Yeah.
being broadcasted into our conscious and subconscious mind.
Oh my gosh. Oh, you're always so well put, Aria. I love that. And thank you for
That is
calling
my
me a producer, because that is what yeah, I'm a producer for the cosmos and for the truth.
yes.
Because we'll talk about this in future episodes, but the
Mhm.
concept of like art versus propaganda,
Yes.
and the idea of when you're telling stories having like nefarious ulterior motives, and perhaps you had a story and it's now going to be used as something that's going to be like a Trojan horse that's going to encapsulate something else for
Yeah.
other people. And being able to deduce all that can be hard, especially if you're being put in a position where you need to survive, you need to pay rent, you need to do all these things. But
Yeah.
that's really, that's a good way to kind of even close the show as a whole, though. Like this is like a
Yeah, that's
beacon.
quantum play,
Yeah, that
right?
is
Like
quantum
that's
play.
the
Yeah.
medicine to that is Quantum Play Studios. It's quantum play. And like we've said this in a few episodes, where part of the issue is we take everything so seriously. And I think you said it, right? Like
Just,
creating your own story.
yeah, play in it. And also, like, we can then have some forgiveness for each other
Yeah.
in a certain context, because we've created as a sandbox, right? So not to say it's like rules or anything, but it's just like, okay, in this place, in this sandbox,
Yeah.
perhaps I'm going to build a castle and it's only going to be half done. I'm going to need you to help build a moat, or like I need you to like, it's not done yet. And
Yeah.
that's the idea of, you're so sweet too, and like you have feedback or certain ideas, right? Which like I guess could be conceived as criticism, but it's to me it's not, because it's all just refinement. It's all
Yeah.
just like how, like, you know, you have a sword that's made of like the best metal in the world, like, come out of the forge, but you still need to like beat the crap
Camera.
out of it to like make it, hone it, make it perfect. So like perfect's not a good word, but to uh
Wrong. To do what a sword is supposed to do.
yes,
Fire and
exactly.
ice will
Yes.
just, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Have it be the right sharpness and like
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
that work that goes into it for it to finally be ready for someone to hold it.
Yeah.
And so that work, when it comes to
Yeah.
entertainment and putting stuff out there, especially when it comes to things like truth. I
Mhm.
watch a lot of channels, a few podcasts, like Robert Phoenix, if you're out there, I would love to produce your show. Like, but there's a lot of truth channels out there too that are the content is like amazing, but then I'll like look and be like, oh, yeah, 51 views, and
Yeah.
it. But if perhaps they took that nugget of the video, pulled that out, and then added a little bit more like sparkles to it,
Yeah.
that message would reach more people, and then
Yeah.
they could come and like see the whole full conversation in its full. But I think sometimes people think like, this is my truth, it should just be able to catch.
Stand on its own. And like my one comment to that is, in an idealistic world, we all think that, oh, I did this and it's amazing, right? In the end, whatever we're producing needs to be consumable by another person. And like
There's the
you
other end of that circuit, right?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like if I like spicy food and I have 10,000 chilies in something and you don't like spicy food, it doesn't matter how much I say it's good and it's true and the flavors. If you can't ingest it, you can't ingest it. And this is why like the artists have to me the hardest job in the collective, in the consciousness realm, because they have to have this balance of what someone can digest that
Mm.
does not dilute the truth, but does not overly fractalize it, but also doesn't like overly simplify it or distort it completely.
Oof.
Right. And this is,
Yeah.
and like, that's why I say, like, that's why I say Rachel is a very good producer, because like, and she's produced a lot of stuff. Like, I've danced with you, we do videos,
Yeah.
we're doing like a whole bunch of, we're doing a whole bunch of things. And like, I complain a lot. I'm like, I hate this, I can't do the blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I will take this. And then she's able to like, refine is really good. And I have to say, creation and production is a vulnerable process. It's kind of like a relationship. If it's not going well, this is telling you a lot about the dynamic. So
Mm-hmm.
there's sacred intimacy here, right? Because I wouldn't be able to take, or you wouldn't be able to take what the other is saying if we didn't have that. But I trust that the final product is going to be much better because we've like teased it out,
Yes.
right? There's a satisfaction in that is really like, it's a matrix situation. You have to experience it to know it. So I will say that on production, working with Rachel from that perspective.
Oh, thanks, Aria. I appreciate that. Like, I mean, it's. I think that also, like, you're such a good person with words. Like,
Yeah, that's
just
my gift.
that is, yeah. And I don't think that people writing. I love that you like to like refer to artists like they're over here. But you're an artist too, right? You realize that with words, like to orate, to speak, to be in flow, all of that stuff, like freestyle rap back in the day. I used to have a friend of mine who like, it's just, where does that come from? But then I think of like freestyle dance, like where does that come from? Like
Yeah,
same
true.
thing. Like even stuff that you say sometimes in this show, like
Mhm.
where did that come from, right? And that's what we're like, let's just hit record just in case something comes out and we like never, like it's gone in the
Yeah,
ether and
yeah,
we don't
no,
know
for
where
sure.
it
I
went.
mean, so for those who don't know, Dragon Warriors is this epic saga that Rachel is writing. And like, one of my delights a couple of months ago was she sent me this 187-page manuscript. And I was like reading it. And then I'm like, oh, this character doesn't have a bit with that character. And like, I like, again, and like I was like so happy to do it. It's like it's on my story. I mean, I'm in it, but it's not my story. And like I don't know if you remember, but I was like, whenever you're ready to like, in my mind, you can thread each of the 8 characters and then make them have bits and then callbacks a little bit later, because it makes us for such a like a tingly experience. Like, you have this like throwback joke, and like shortening and synthesizing
Yeah, yeah,
dialogue,
yeah.
not over explaining something, letting the reader be part of it. Like,
Yes.
oh, this
Yes. All that
editing
good
for
stuff.
me is like sexy times.
Oh my
Like,
gosh. But you know what? It's you bring up a very good point about the editing process that I did I submitted a couple of short stories to Reedsy, who does like short story competitions. I recommend you do it as well. And one of my stories, which is actually an excerpt from the Dragon Warriors universe, I
okay.
submitted, right? And then I actually had some great comments being like, is there more to this story? Like, what happens? I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's
But one of
amazing.
the comments was apparently my story was submitted as something that, like, this workshop used to, like, review things.
Okay.
And so he left me this really long, in
Wow.
depth. It was really nice. It was a really beautiful, like, but the main criticism was, like, the copy edit thing, right?
Yeah.
And then I told him, like, well, this is because I literally submitted this 10 minutes before it was due and I did not edit it.
Yeah.
I just let it, like, I don't, writing for me is a very, I don't know how else to, like, it's like a divination process. It's like I go into like a trance and like just stuff comes out and then I look at it later. I'm like, I don't even know who that was. And so
Oh
it's,
yeah. I never remember.
yeah. But so in the editing though, and really like trying to ensure that the plot makes sense and ensuring that like all
Mm.
this other like stuff.
So editing for me is more divinatory because for me, editing needs to make sure that I'm not changing the voice and the intention of whoever wrote it, but it is
Oh,
refined. So it's almost like,
what
you
a
know,
I
you're,
love
yeah,
that.
it's like your lower, you know how like we have like a large and a small intestine, and both of their jobs is to digest and metabolize food in a slightly different way because the
Yeah,
enzymes in both intestines are slightly different. So to me,
I love
the
that.
editing process has to keep, because I can be like, oh, this is wrong, or like, but this is not about me, right? Like you're trying to take what's already here and be like, ooh, just kind of like juice that orange a little bit more so that the sparkly bits come out, so that the tasty parts come out. So
Yeah.
it's actually far easier for me to edit. I can get into like divinatory writing, but I'm learning this about myself. It's
Wow.
effortless for me to edit the work of
Well, that's
someone.
good news for me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's what I offered because I don't want to change anything. I just want to make certain parts that I know are important pop more by by just trimming some of the other parts.
So if
It's
you
like,
need editing work done,
yes, yes, intro interviews, and if you need scripts edited, but please do reach out. Again, our email is todaysharmonics@gmail.com. And the last thing I wanted to say to end this whole piece on
mm,
entertainment is there is, I think, the age of Aquarius, the
mm,
power of the consumer
mm.
cannot be understated. And I'm going to say this from
The
this
power of the observer, right? Of
as but
engage.
like engaged, to not be an observer where things are happening on a screen, because the thing is, we do that in life, right? Like life is happening to us on a screen and we're just like, oh, I like this, I hate this, or blah blah blah, and we, the best we can do is judge. That's all, that's the
Mm,
level of engagement. But to
mm.
actually like receive it, this is my challenge, and this is, I'm only saying this as a challenge because I was challenged to do this all of last week, is to actually receive, deeply receive every piece of content you choose to watch. So if you're on TikTok and you're
Oh,
like, you take a moment, you take a breath, you open TikTok, and whatever you see, you breathe it in and actually see it. Do you actually find this dog video funny? Is it so funny that you're laughing and holding your belly? Like, and receiving is like, is an ingestion, right? When we receive things that we love, your soul is nourished. I have been so sated by watching a few bits. I'm really into Doctor Who. So I watched like 2 episodes and I am so sated because I'm just full. I
yeah.
literally cannot binge anymore because I want to just like digest it
Like
so
sink into
tomorrow.
those stories a bit. But yeah, have it all like permeate through you. Yeah, love it.
There's bits I hate. I'm like, why did they do this? And then I get to actually like digest my idea, my anger, my judgment, my this, that, and the other. And then I'm super ready to receive it again. And I would I don't say challenge and a do this and report back kind of way, but like look at what you're receiving, look at what you're ingesting as a consumer, because your feelings, your body language, if you're receiving something like this versus if you're watching something like that, it'll tell you so much. And if you're sated, it means you're not enslaved anymore. You're not responding from hunger. And that to
Mm.
me is a reclamation of that sacred bond just for each and every one of us, where we are now engaged with those performing for us and we're actually receiving them.
Totally. It's your sacred attention, right? That attend like that is the
To attend it. Yeah. Like actually attend it.
yeah. No, and just like really like just be in it. A big comment people tell me on my TikTok reads are like they love how like into the story I get. I will have read the story a bunch of times and like in it I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, really?" Like I'm like reading it for the first time because like sometimes things you can read a story 3 times and then like especially with comic books
Oh my God.
it'll something
Totally.
else will come up like I don't even remember reading that before but it's there now and but to be in it and to like fully allow yourself and give yourself permission to feel
Feel it.
it like feel excited for the characters feel like a never ending story when like the horse dies. Like I remember Kevin telling me like remember like I'm like that's trauma. Like I remember
Yeah, yeah.
you feel it, but the point
Because
is
death is a part of life, right? Like, and it's this thing, if your grandparent died or something, like, we're so distant and disconnected from so many actual life things. Sometimes, like, if the only time you knew love was when you sat and watched Ross and Rachel in Friends, it's sad, but that might be a person's narrative on love, right? So if that's where, and it's not a bad thing, if that's where you are, then that's what you receive, so that you can
build
get
on it.
ready for the next
Yeah,
appetizer, like get
yeah.
ready for the next course of it, right? Like, and like this type of stuff, everything that we ingest, like what you are what you eat, what we consume, we are that. So if we're consuming like random stuff that is actually draining us, that's this like hypnotic trancey stuff,
Mm-hmm.
then that's what we become.
Yes.
And like this is not the
Yeah.
time or place to do that. And I don't think anyone on Rumble does that personally, but
No, I feel like, but that's the idea though, like the different audiences in different places, and like this idea also that not everything is for everyone, and
yeah.
resonance with things, right? Like that's why you have a favorite character and I have a favorite character, and sometimes they're the same favorite character and sometimes they're not, and like that's okay. And you have a favorite episode, let's say, in like a season, and another person will have a favorite episode because these resonate
Yeah.
for you, right? And that's the point. Like we should be able to have the space and the ability to choose. And I love your challenge because that's a great way to hone your own deduction instruments
Exactly.
of resonance,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, because like those stories, like I truly think there's this writer from, I need to find the book. I've downloaded it. I have no idea where I put it, but he's from Malta actually, and he wrote this whole fictional story, but it's very esoteric. In it, there's a lot of like truths. It's like these two guys walking up a mountain, but he talks this a piece of dialogue where he basically says that in any piece of art, movies, poetry, whatever it is, there are keys in that for you that you left for yourself from
Yeah.
the future.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Right? So like you watching The Witcher and like identifying, let's say, with Yennefer for a certain story, in that there's like a something that you can even take to other stories that you are exposed to, and like connect a dot, and now all of a sudden there's a truth that's specific to you, even though everyone's watched that same scene.
Yeah. And it's not a can. Like, I actually live like that. And so do you.
Yes.
Right? Like, I'll actually, like, Star Wars Clone Wars has this entire arc, 3 or 4 episode arc on Yoda meeting the spirit force of
Mm,
on Jin, and then Qui-Gon is like, listen, there's a cosmic force, because up until that point the Jedi Temple believes that once you die you're like gone, and
mm,
everything else is like a trick of the Sith. And I've multiple times I've seen I've watched this like 9 times at this point. Multiple times I've had to pause it mid, like Qui-Gon has this like monologue.
I love Qui-Gon, by the way.
Pause. Oh my god! Obviously, he's like the supreme Jedi. Um, I've had to pause it and just wail, or I've had to pause it and just like,
Oh,
because something in me is
reacts
needs
to
to
that.
hear that, because that's the beauty of cosmic truths, right? It doesn't matter if it's coming through like a book written by a monk, or it's coming through the voice of Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn, right? Like, but
And Liam Neeson also voiced Aslan.
oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, in Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe movies. Yeah,
But
so
like, it's this thing, like we're all a lot of us are comic book people here, but like, to me it's this thing, right? Like, do I really care who's stronger, Superman versus Thor? I do not. I actually care how these two characters work together with Batman, and how
in a
their
certain
universe,
scenario,
in a
and
certain scenario, and their values, and their like, I am far more interested than in collaboration than competition personally. And so, like these arguments, like who's stronger, I could not care less.
it's
How are they working
always in
together?
context, though, Arthi. Like they all they ask me this all the time, like, and they did this with Doomsday Clock, right? Where
Oh, right.
Superman versus Doctor Manhattan. What ends up
Yes,
happening is, spoiler
right.
alert, Doctor Manhattan becomes inspired by
Mhm.
Superman, and he decides to create a Superman in the Watchmen universe.
Oh, dang. I mean,
Because
that's a cool,
it's a
that's
happy ending. No, because like
yeah.
I did a lot of like looking into like this is a good way to end this actually too because it's a meta like I read Doomsday Clock and I had to talk to Toshi, my agency for
Yeah.
TikTok a little bit because some of the content in that is really like spicy. Like it's
Oh,
really like it really gets in there like of like are we living in this right now? Like
oh, I'm reading a comic book and I know I'm reading a,
yeah, cuz some of
I'm
the stuff
reading
Dr. Manhattan says, you're just kind of like
he's great.
wait
Yeah.
a minute.
Yeah.
What?
Is
So
he actually
he
talking to people?
also literally steps off a checkerboard
Yeah.
onto like there's the symbolism in there of like
Yeah,
the
yeah. Breaking the matrix.
game and the breaking them at the construct and like
Yeah. Yes.
um time is happening all the time and just
Yes.
um the comedian says something funny in that where they're like where's Dr. Manhattan, he's like who the hell knows where and when Dr. Manhattan is.
Yeah.
Right, like where or when in time is he, who knows, he's somewhere, so or everywhere at the same time.
Mhm.
But in that like the idea of Doomsday Clock was a reaction. They made that story
Yes.
because it was supposed to be a commentary on realism in comic books. So if you look at Superman, what Dr. Manhattan does in Doomsday Clock is he tinkers with parameters of time. He makes it so the Green Lantern doesn't exist. He does things so that like Superman doesn't have a family anymore. All this kind of stuff to see like what is it about Superman that makes this universe like what it is. It's
Yeah.
experimenting with it, and
Yeah.
then he realizes that it's because Superman was loved,
Mm. Yes.
and he happened to be a super being, but in the end, like he had a father and a mother, and like
Who loved him.
friends
And
who
yes.
loved him, and because of that, he became who
Yeah.
he was. And so once Doctor Manhattan figures that out, he's like, oh, I see. So he raises a child of his own to become a Superman in the Watchmen universe because
Okay.
what they say about Doomsday Clock is that it's a reaction to the like if you look at the Watchmen universe, it's very nihilistic. It's very just like
It is. Yes.
and even Ozzy, like they end up doing this whole scam to save the world by killing a bunch of people because you're just trying to create a bigger enemy. So what it's basically showing is that there is value in this idealistic way of looking at things and that art punch up, like go up. Like
Yeah.
there is value,
It's
of course, in
love, bringing romance back. Yeah.
yeah, and what you're saying, like the romance and the rom com and this like almost like idealized view of things, but at the same time, to be inspired by the art and the fact that like yes, me as a go-go dancer, I don't walk around the streets looking like this, right? That's the but the point is for the it's
Beauty
out.
beauty is inspiring because and a beauty with a capital B, not the
Yes.
institution of beauty, right? Like beauty nourishes the feminine spirit, the feminine magnetic principle in all of us, the yin in every being. In a dog, it receives love and beauty. Like if you pet a dog, if you like, or like a baby, or even me, right? Like if you're like, oh, you have lovely hair,
Yeah.
some part of me is. And so to aim towards what makes us better
Yeah.
rather than stay in a fear response of what we want to avoid. So yeah, sure, is there a space or time for all the apocalypse movies? Sure,
Yes.
100%, because we're ingesting and we have to reclaim that, right? Like what is evil is all that is not reclaimed on earth. And so yeah, we're going to reclaim all of that, sure, but to aspire towards what is love, what is grace, what is mercy, what is beautiful, like I think the confusion is that when in our immature minds and our immature consciousness, when we saw a boy meets girl and blah blah blah, we're like, oh, it's heteronormative, oh, I don't look like
Yeah.
that, right? Like we kind of received it in the material construct, in the personality construct. But what if this is not about what you should do when you go on a date with that person? What if this is an aspect of the inner marriage? What if whatever you're watching, whether it's Romeo or Juliet or 10 Things I Hate About You, this is
Inner
your
world stuff.
dialogue. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, where are you guys? Like, are you actually 40 years old, but your inner masculine feminine are like 15 and having an argument? Are they bickering like your parents? Like the dynamic
Oh.
of consciousness is as within, so without, right? Like we talked about spell casting. So we
Yeah.
have hermetic principles in play, which are the basis of all quantum physics, right? As within, so without, as above, so below. So
Dropping
when
some
you
Dr.
yeah,
Manhattan like characteristics in there.
totally, yeah, like because he sees it, because he can see the grand play, right? So again, like back to the challenge and like just stitching all of this together at the past the end here.
Oh, yes.
You know, like this is us receiving. This is us receiving to see what like what's my inner Dr. Manhattan? Like what's my comedian? The Ozymandias within me, the one who is like, I'm gonna save the world by massacring a bunch of people. That voice might be in you. That you know, that voice isn't loud in me, but it's certainly there. And
It's
so you have to
acknowledgement of all of those aspects of who
acknowledgement,
you are. Yeah,
all of
yeah.
it,
Even the
right?
parts that are just kind of like, that's why we hate certain
Certain characters.
characters, right?
Yeah,
Because there's parts of that character that in you, like I've
yeah.
realized that with certain people. I'm like, wow, there's parts that like I've done shit like that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I hated the bard in The Witcher the first time I saw it. It took me two
Really?
watches to be like, oh my God, because my inner artist was just so suffocated. This was pre-writing and pre all of this. When Witcher first came out, I
Yeah.
had such a hard time with Dandelion's character. And I knew it too. So I kept rewatching it and I'm like, I had a roommate who was an actor and I made her watch it with me and she was like yeah, it was amazing. And
That's
yeah, see, like it's so weird. I found him annoying.
so that what you just said right there, what you went through, like that is the challenge. Like
That
when you're watching art, when you're watching movies, when you're even listening to a song, like the parts that like you just like really pay attention to how you're feeling, how it's like affecting you on all your internal cells and what's happening, because all it takes is just a little bit of attention to it, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, like,
yeah. And
or
something
yeah.
unlocks in you. Like for me with the like this was before I was launching anything. And as soon as I came to reclamation with it, I realized that my own expression was so suffocated because I love the bard,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And like what an amazing way to use what we consume as our own alchemical process. Like that's power, my friends.
Da-da-da. And
And
that's
with
taking
that,
it back, taking it back, and not to judge or anything like that, but just to be like aware and lucid in what we're doing here, right? So,
yeah,
oh my
totally.
gosh, I think we totally went over.
Oh my gosh. We thank all of you for being with us. This is clearly we're both so passionate about it and we each have our different reasons. We might play on this topic again in a couple months or so, just teasing it out because entertainment, what we consume, what we ingest and
Because
what
this is entertainment too,
is it.
hopefully.
Yeah, these are so a big part of this show is Rachel and I, these are our normal conversations that we're
They
just
are. They literally are.
nothing is put on. Like we have a little bit of structure, but like
Just
I
because otherwise it would be 3 hours. That's why.
would
Really. And
yeah,
we're
it's really and it already is long. So let's end it here. Thank you for joining
yes.
us.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this episode of Today's Harmonics, where we talked all about entertainment in all of its forms, all of its iterations, as well as, the different types of entertainment and how they've affected us, as well as what it looks like for the new earth as we are building it right now. And that's what this radio show, this talk show is all about. It's about being that voice for as changes are happening in the entertainment world and many, many others.
All the
So,
worlds,
yeah,
all the
that's right. All the universes, the multiverses. All right.
join
Anything
us
else to
next
add,
week.
Aria?
No, just join us next week.
Yes.
It'll be Friday evening. We'll go live hopefully around the same time, around 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will see you then.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.